Nino Leitner, great to have you here. What are your highlights of the Photokina so far?
Well, it's very impressive that the camera manufacturer is releasing cameras by the hour right now. It's getting crazy. I mean, it's hard to keep track, but it's exactly what we have been wishing for. 2 years ago when nothing was happening in the DSLR market, because the big guys probably were still working on it, or they haven't yet realized the potential of video DSLRs. But we were waiting back then, and now we have tons of new cameras. So that's probably the highlight here. Yes.
Do you have like a favorite camera which came out?
Yeah, I mainly use the Canon C300 now. I'm really in love with this camera. I've worked with it for the first time in early December last year with a pre-production model, and we shot this test short called 1359, and which got a little bit of a viral hit. And I was just, I just waited for the first camera to be shipped in Europe, and I got the first one out of Germany to Vienna, and yeah, that's what I've been using since then.
So what was your first camera you started shooting with?
Well, the first camera I started shooting with was, let me think, I think it was a VHS or High 8 camera when I was 12 or 13. But then, professionally, the first one I used, the first one I bought was a DVX 100, a mini DV camcorder in the early 2000s. And yeah, I shot a full documentary with this, a 1 hour documentary with it, which toured around festivals across the world, and that works too. I mean, camera is important, but it's not all about the camera. That's what people forget.
Right. And what do you think about the Blackmagic cam?
The Blackmagic camera is a very interesting breed because they are completely, they are not camera manufacturers, so they don't have anything to lose. So the pricing is very aggressive. I think it costs like €2,500, and it already includes a full copy of DaVinci Resolve, which is great software, which costs like $2,000 if you buy it alone. So you practically get a very cheap camera with impressive specs, with raw footage capabilities, so you can record raw. But I think it needs a lot of work. You need to add a lot of stuff to make it really usable for professional jobs, because you have a built-in battery which lasts around 90 minutes maximum. That means you have to add external power supply. You really have to. There's no other choice. You have to add a rig because it's not very, ergonomic. But all that can be worked on, and we've all been shooting with DSLRs forever now, and I think that's why we're used to that. But it's not a consumer camera. It's like a professional camera that is kind of marketed in a consumer kind of way, because the way it looks and the way it is built is very like Apple style. So I think it's a very promising and good camera, but it needs a lot of work. And also you have a crop sensor that needs very, very wide lenses, so you get a half decent wide. So because you have a 2.3 times crop, for example, this one, the GH2, is a 2 times crop, and this is often a challenge to work with this camera to find wide lenses. So this is even smaller, but still, it's their first camera. It's an incredibly cheap camera, and it will be incredibly successful, I think. And let's just wait and see what they're coming up with next.
Apparently, one of the main features is the capability of taking raw pictures. Do you think it's a little bit of a hype doing raw recording?
Yeah, the funny thing about RAW is everybody always wanted it, and now that people have it with the Blackmagic, people are surprised that they can't actually work with it, because it's a massive load of data that you're acquiring. For example, if you have a 240 gigabyte SSD in that camera, will allow you to record about 35 minutes of raw data, and then you have to work with it. You have to find a way to actually edit it, to actually do stuff with it. So I think it is very, very useful for specific stuff. So if you do special effects, or you really need the really good highlight protection, or pull out everything out of the shadows. But it is also very demanding in post-production. So, very, very demanding. You literally cannot edit on a normal computer with it. You need special hardware to be actually able to work with it properly. So this is a problem that a lot of people don't think about. But you do have the additional option of shooting in ProRes, which is great. ProRes is a great codec. It also is very, very reliable, and you can edit straight away. So this is a good option. But I'm curious and looking forward to people actually shooting something in RAW and how they deal with it.
So you said you're more or less a C300 man. Any other cams in your storage?
Well, I'm interested in to have a look at the Panasonic Gh3, their new model, because I think Panasonic are one of the few companies that really closely listen to all the feedback that they get from the filmmakers. It's always been that way. When I think back to my DVX100B I had, I think, or I still have it actually, and I had the A and then the B came out, and it was just the tiny things that they made better, but they really listen. And that's what I like about Panasonic. I'm wondering where their professional department is going though, because the AF100 is, to be honest, dead. Nobody buys this camera anymore. It's now, the Gh3 is a better camera than the AF100 image-wise. So I'm curious what they are bringing out next. But Gh3 is very promising. I will have a look at the new Canon 6D, which is their cheap version of the 5D practically, with a full-frame sensor. And also the Nikon D600 is something I really closely look at, because Nikon is a company that doesn't have to lose anything in the video market, so they really are finally now pushing forward in the video market. And with the D800, I think they prove that they are serious about it. It has a headphone jack. I mean, this is something, wow, we were dreaming about, which sounds weird, but it's something that's very essential and almost no other camera had.
You probably watched the Secuto camera shootout 2012, and it looked a little bit like you could shoot like big cinema movies with a small cam. Arri Alexa compared to an iPhone wasn't such a huge difference. So what does that mean?
Well, I think the point of this year's Secuto shootout was to prove that it's really about the work you put in. So you can make a really small camera work on the big screen if you put in a lot of effort. For example, the GH2 images looked quite good in this shootout, but it has a dynamic range that is nowhere near close of the professional cameras. So you need to light differently. And that's what is also the problem of this shootout, that it's hard to compare the cameras with that, because they had different DPs and they could adjust the lighting for each and optimize for each and every camera. But in another way, that's what you do when you're shooting, You try to get most out of it depending on the equipment you have and stuff like that. So it just proved that you can make it work if you have to, but it's not necessarily a good idea to shoot on an iPhone or shoot a feature film on a GH2 simply because it is possible if a camera is not the biggest budget consideration when you shoot a film. And that's what people forget, There is a lot of stuff that costs much more. And it will save you a lot of money if you use a professional camera, if you're a camera that is made for shooting a film, It will save you time, which is the most expensive thing on a set. And it will save you on lighting equipment, it will save you on all kinds of stuff. So if you have a better camera, you will be able to reduce costs in other departments. But it is definitely possible, and the differences between the different cameras are blurring right now, that's true.
And in the end, it's the guy behind the camera rather than the camera itself, I guess.
Exactly. That was the point of the shootout, I think. It's about how you deal with it and who deals with it, because you also saw big differences in, even some of the big cameras didn't look as good as I thought they would, simply because I would have lit it differently, just personal preference.
So where are we moving? Where's the market going?
Yeah, it's funny though that you see there was this DSLR hype a few years ago, and everybody was like, wow, are we going to shoot everything on photo cameras in the future? But the truth is, the only reason professional did that was that there was no professional camera available, which ticked all the boxes. Now we have a lot of professional cameras that are made for cinema and have finally an affordable, a big sensor, and are still affordable. So professionals like myself and many others are, to be honest, a little bit moving away from DSLRs again for our own productions, because you don't want to compromise, and you don't have to have separate sound recording. You don't have to have all the pain that you go through when shooting with the DSLR. But it is possible to get a very, very similar or almost same look with a cheaper camera if you put a lot of work in. And that's why they are still relevant and they will not go away. But it will still blur the market, but I think the next step will be cameras, new players in the market like Blackmagic, or we'll see whoever else comes next, or the Apertus open source camera, all kinds of projects that are now pushing through. And I think in a few years we have a lot of small companies producing cameras, which we never had before. And then the big guys really get under pressure, I think, because that's what can really hurt them, But until then, it's good that we have now a democratized filmmaking. Everybody who can afford a camera, where that is like, it starts at 500 euros with a 550D right now or something like that. You can shoot very, very great films with it, but you need to work differently. And the market is getting bigger, but it's also getting more complicated.
All right. Thanks a lot. Great having you here, and see you soon.